Indeed. So I'd like to begin my presentation with a bit of a personal anecdote. The beginning of the summer of 2019, I was driving through Louisa County and I started to see all these signs pop up left and right for different candidates that were running for local and state public office. And it got me interested, who were these candidates? A political-minded person. I wanted to know who they were, what their ideas were, if they were affiliated with a party, and most importantly, what the jobs they were running for were exactly, because I saw Commissioner of the Revenue. I had no idea what they did at that point in time. So that's kind of what inspired me to do this project. I did an online search and I couldn't find any information. So it's just my natural curiosity that brought me to this. I'm DSeay, and my presentation is on media and local elections. So for the research portion of my project, I focused specifically on the impacts and the influence of social media and national elections. And well, just elections in general. I studied a very wide variety of them, but focused mainly on national elections, and even more specifically on those in 2016 and the 2016 presidential election cycle. I discovered, what brought me to this, I was very interested in social media because it's something that is really, it's been brought in with the new millennium. It's constantly developing. It outpaces laws a lot of the time. We're learning as we go. And as it's something that is seeped into nearly every corner of society, how we operate our businesses, how we advertise things. It's very interesting to me to see how politics has gone and kind of transferred over to that whole field. Another interesting statistic for you, in the 2016 election cycle, a higher percentage of Americans actually considered Facebook to be their primary news source than those who watch CNN and Fox News combined. That's a startling statistic, but it definitely shows the level of influence that these social media platforms have over elections. Yes, so going into that, I was interested to see how political campaigns utilize social media and how they went in and used it to reach an incredibly wide-reaching base of people. And I learned that there are several mistruths associated with social media, and those are that when you use it, you are given an equal platform to people of high levels. So if you're an average citizen, you can reach out to as many people as a high-level politician running a major national campaign would, and this is absolutely false, or at the very least misleading, because there are some anomalies here and there. But overall, what I found that political campaigns did is they flooded out social media platforms with an incredible amount of money. In fact, I believe the statistic was around $83 million were spent on Facebook campaigns alone in the 2016 election cycle, which is a monstrous amount of money. But it definitely, when you think that many people use Facebook as a primary news source, it makes perfect sense why they would do that. I learned that an incredibly large industry has developed around this whole practice. And I researched specifically political consulting firms, and even more specifically Cambridge Analytica, which was fascinating to me because it showed that there aren't very many partisan lines in these companies. Cambridge Analytica was hired by the Trump campaign in 2016, but people who work for that company also worked on Obama's 2012 Facebook campaign. So it really doesn't have anything to do with their political allegiance. It's just more so who gives them the money. And then they go in and they would target people. They'd build up personal profiles using the information that they gathered by working closely with Facebook. And they would go in and basically, if you were undecided, they would flood out your social media feed with heavily partisanized information to try and swing you in one direction or the other to suit the campaign they were working for. The legality of these actions has been called into question a lot. It's actually been crawling up the Supreme Court in California as recently as late 2019. So yes, learning about all of this really, it interested me. But it got me thinking, how can I use media in a positive manner to reach out to people to help them make informed decisions, giving them objective information? And I wanted to focus specifically on state and local elections because firstly, those were the elections that were coming up. And secondly, local and state news is constantly overshadowed by national news and national level politics, which is, national level in politics is clearly important. However, you'll find that your average citizens are consistently more impacted by the decisions made by local community leaders and state level leaders than they are on national levels. So the goal of my project was to disperse objective information and provide a concise source of information, a consolidated source of information where people could go and they could learn about these politicians who are running and what their ideas were and answer all the questions that I personally had just driving through Louisa County. And that led me to the Central Virginian. The Central Virginian is the premier local newspaper in Louisa County, and I got an internship with Mr. David Holtzman. So Mr. Holtzman is over there. Incredible man. Yes, he's worked at a variety of publications as well as urban planning organizations and urban development organizations throughout his career. He's been at the Central Virginian for 4 years now and serves as their chief editor. I wanted to get out of this internship. I wanted to go in. I wanted to basically learn about the process of journalism. I wanted to see how you could absorb complex information and simplify it without leaving out details and provide it to a base of people so that they could get as much information as effectively as possible. And that's exactly what I did. I went and attended multiple meetings with Mr. Holtzman and a few debates, well, a debate. For example, this is the Planning Commission meeting that I attended early on in my internship, and I got to witness the whole process of journalism by sitting with Mr. Holtzman, listening to the same information he was getting, discussing that information with him, and seeing the articles that were created, edited, and published. I got to witness the publishing process that happened on a weekly basis with the Central Virginian. They put out a newspaper every Wednesday. So that was a very interesting process for me. And I worked very closely with the Central Virginian, not only in my internship, but also in my community service. So Mr. Holtzman served as my mentor for both of them. For my community service, I broke it down basically into 2 parts. So the first one was to go at the first goal of my project, which was to provide a consolidated source of information for people to go on and gather information on the local and state level candidates. And I did so actually through the Central Virginia, working very close with them and working on their site. We created a forum that was exclusively for the 2019 election cycle. And we went and put profiles for each candidates. We offered them the opportunity to give us information that people could read. And then the most exciting part for me was definitely creating audio interviews, which is something that Mr. Holtzman and I had discussed and come up with. We wanted to offer candidates the ability to come on and have conversations with us rather than having a word maximum. We wanted them to be able to come in and just articulate their ideas in a manner where they could really come across to their voting base and get their ideas across to people and show that they were enthusiastic about what they were doing for the community, and just offer that new platform for people to go on who perhaps would want to listen to it in their car or something rather than read a long article. And throughout that process, I would reach out to multiple candidates. I'd email them and schedule dates, and then I would help organize some questions that we would ask them. I'd help conduct the interviews. And then later on, I would edit the interviews, which you can see right here. And this was something that I had not experimented with beforehand. Those of you who know me know that I am not a particularly tech-savvy person, so this was really a challenge for me, but something that I surprisingly found very fun. It was interesting. I just made sure that all of the interviews ran as smoothly as possible and that we didn't cut out any information, but we made sure that everything just flowed properly. The second part of my community service was working with the Central Virginian to develop their Instagram presence. They had an Instagram page prior to my arrival there as an intern. However, it was sparsely used, and when it was used mainly for local sports coverage. I don't believe there was any political coverage at the time that I had gotten there. And I worked with them throughout the election cycle to provide the profiles of the candidates. We put up pictures of the people who were running, And we also gave some information as to what they were running for, what their ideas were, and then we put the links to the audio interviews that we did in the bio for Instagram so that people would be able to get that information. Overall, the response to our efforts was generally positive. We put out a survey and found that 70% of the users found the information to be very or somewhat useful in their decision process as far as voting goes. 80% of the people who took the survey found the information to be very objective and concise and understandable, comprehensive. And another interesting way that we can gauge how exactly we reached a certain number of people in the community is the amount of likes that we got on these things. So the highest amount of likes we got on an Instagram post, I believe, was 76. However, the Facebook post, which the Facebook post contained pretty much the same information, it was just on a more developed platform, and we had around 587 was the highest number of likes. I would like to be forthcoming about the information that we collected because I don't feel that it's an incredibly fair representation of our efforts and the public's response to our efforts. And the reason that I say this is there were only 11 people who took the survey. So even though we got fairly positive results from it, it's not an incredibly accurate representation of our interaction with the community. And an interesting fact about these is that the less popular candidates that did not win did not get very many likes, whereas, for example, sitting Sheriff Donnie Lowe, who won by a substantial margin, he had the highest amount of likes on both Instagram and Facebook. So while it did show us who saw and interacted with our posts, it didn't necessarily show who saw all of them and got any information. It more so showed what their voting tendencies were. However, it was a very interesting experience, to say the least. So my personal takeaway from this whole thing is that it reaffirmed my interest in politics. I've always been very interested in politics, but I have a whole new appreciation for local and state level politics, as well as how much goes into running a campaign, even on a local community level. Being able to come in and have these politicians or prospective politicians come in and share their ideas and talk to us and share their enthusiasm really had an impact on me because I could really get a sense of the passion that they had for serving their community, and it was really quite inspiring. Beyond that, I developed my professional skills because, as you guys may have gathered, I love to talk. I love to talk to a lot of people as often as I can. However, I had not really done it in a professional setting and gone as far as to reach out to different politicians whom I had never spoken to and have them come in and sit down and have a long talk about sometimes controversial issues with us. So that was a very new and interesting experience to me. Yeah, so I wish to take all of this information and use it in my future plans. I would like to attend, well, I plan on attending William and Mary and getting a degree in government and political science. And yes, I hope to take all the skills that I've learned and apply them to whatever future I go into. I would like to pursue something that has something to do with politics. That's incredibly broad, but I've only reaffirmed my interest throughout this process. I would like to extend a huge thanks to the judges who have come out and listened to all of these presentations, as well as Mr. Holtzman for being a phenomenal mentor to me and really making this whole process absolutely wonderful. I'd like to thank my family for being a wonderful support system and being there for me all the time, as well as Miss King for keeping my head on when I thought I was literally going to explode, as well as the class of 2020, BRVGS. You guys are incredible. I don't know what I'd do without you. So now I will open the floor to any questions that you may have. Yes? Okay. Okay.
Okay. So I know that you love history and love politics.
Definitely.
And coming from someone who really doesn't, then wanting to make
Mm-hmm.
I like that you kind of married the two things together with journalism, also with politics and information.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we ever know that the information that we're getting is true? Meaning, journalists ever really give us unbiased
Unbiased information. It's very difficult. That's actually something that I learned with Mr. Holtzman is in our efforts to provide as objective information as possible. Through our process, we went and we gave the candidates the questions we were going to ask first so that they could answer the questions that suited them and that they wished to convey, so that it was more so we were just linking the candidates to the people rather than putting our own filter over it. However, just on a general level, I think you'll find that there are some less partisanized news sources than others. I'm not sure if there's any way to 100% eradicate the bias in these news sources. I think you'll find that if both sides are represented well in a news source, it's generally pretty good. As well as if you go for every extreme possible, you'll probably get something in between. I had everything from CNN to InfoWars on my phone at one point, just as an attempt to find something in the middle. So, yes. Yes. On Facebook, we definitely have interesting conversations. There's some controversies, people get a little hostile sometimes. On Instagram, I didn't see so much other than, great job, congratulations on winning, Stacey Fletcher, and stuff like that. Yes, does that answer your question? Okay. It wasn't 100%. It wasn't 100% participation. I don't exactly recall what the number of candidates. We got most of the local level politicians. The highest profile politician that we got, well, we got both of the state level Democrats who are running. We got Juanita Jo Matkins and we got Amy Lawford to come in and talk to us. And they were both really great and genuine and shared their ideas. However, the Republicans were not so cooperative in that matter. It's not that they didn't respect what we were doing. I think it was just a lack of time. We were squeezing time, especially towards the end, and those campaigns, especially on a state level, have a lot to cover. But we got a good amount of people to come in and talk to us. Yes?
Okay, so you did
Analytica.
You were crossing party lines,
Mm-hmm.
basically just based on whoever was willing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a suggestion for a balance between our economy being able to run? Pretty much anybody can have a business because they're going to generate income for themselves. Is there a balance between being able to have this kind of economy and not having proper representation of whoever has the most money?
Honestly, for me, it was less, what I found in my research is that it was less a matter of what those political consultant firms were doing, because they were just doing what they were set up to do. And because some of the things that Cambridge Analytica did were kind of sketchy, especially working with Brexit, some elections in Brazil, the Trump campaign wasn't even that sketchy, but it's very interesting. What was I saying? Cambridge Analytica has been closed down, or they've closed their doors and liquidated it just to be safe throughout this whole process, which leaves a little more shady space, but it's interesting. I think that a more effective way to attack the issues that have come up on this are through the social media platforms. And some of them have. For example, Twitter, I believe, barred all political ads as recently as a few months ago. I think late 2019 they did it. Oh, are we? Did I go over?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Thank you.